What's going on, gardeners? It's Sunday, April 16th, and it is a gorgeous spring afternoon here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, and today is going to be quite possibly the most controversial video I've ever made. Today, we are going to slaughter some sacred cows. We are going to discuss 4 myths that organic gardeners love spreading that just aren't true. This video has to come with a trigger warning because if you're easily offended by topics like this, you may not want to watch. Or maybe you actually should watch this because you could be one of the people spreading these common myths. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. The number 1 myth I want to tackle is the myth that drives me up the wall the most, and that is the use of the phrase chemical fertilizers. Boy, do I hate that phrase because it doesn't make any sense, and it's specifically designed to promote fear-mongering. All a chemical is a pure substance that has been bonded together that cannot be separated from its constituent elements. What does that mean? That means that water is a chemical. The chemical symbol is H2O. Table salt is a chemical. The chemical symbol is NaCl. It doesn't matter if it's made by an organic company, they are all chemicals. So why does this fertilizer right here get labeled a chemical fertilizer when this fertilizer right here doesn't get labeled a chemical fertilizer? They are both chemicals, but the fact is it is fashionable to bash this fertilizer and it's not fashionable to bash this fertilizer. Excuse me, it's really hot today. It's 86 degrees. I need a nice tall glass of chemicals. We have to stop using the phrase chemical fertilizers because they're only designed to spread fear. They are all chemical fertilizers. The correct terms are organic fertilizers and synthesized fertilizers. These organic fertilizers are made out of whole food products like blood meal, bone meal, and feather meal. And these fertilizers can be made from various different ingredients like urea or ammonium or other petroleum-based products, but they are refined in a laboratory to be pure. So they do not actually harm your plants. They've been basically reduced to their chemical substances that are clean, so they are safe to use. Whether you use either type of fertilizer in your garden is up to you. I'm not telling you what to use. I just want everyone to use the proper terminology and not spread fear, because the way that you tend to garden doesn't necessarily mean to be the way that everybody tends to garden, and there is no right way to garden. The second myth that I want to tackle is that water-soluble synthesized fertilizers like this are harmful to use in your garden, and that is just not true. There is no evidence out there to suggest that when used as directed in the concentrations and frequencies recommended, that it poses any harm at all to your plants or your soil. This myth is often spread by bad information. So what people do is they take an extreme case of a commercial farm where they're highly profit driven and the profit margins are very narrow. And what a lot of these commercial farms wind up doing is they don't actually rest their soil, they don't rotate their beds, they have planting after planting after planting, and what they do is they overcompensate by using inordinately large quantities of water-soluble fertilizers to make up for all the organic matter they're not putting back in their soil. So they're basically pounding the life out of their soil and abusing fertilizers to make the system work. A lot of these farms are also located in arid or semi-arid regions where it doesn't rain a lot, so over time these fertilizer salts can build up in the soil and it can become harmful over many years. This is not what we're doing in a backyard setting. We're basically only growing a crop or two, and then things are resting pretty much all winter and being rained on, and the soil is being flushed out. And we're also not abusing the quantities of the fertilizer. We're using like a tablespoon per gallon concentration levels maybe twice a month. This is not going to harm anything, and it is not fair to take these rare abuse cases that only happen in commercial culture and compare it to a backyard garden culture to try and scare people. The same thing can be said about organic gardening, and it wouldn't be fair. Let me give you an example. Commercially grown organic produce has a much higher rate of people getting sick or even dying from food contamination than conventionally grown produce. And that's because organic farms suffer from the same economics of conventional farms. It can be even higher pressure because the margins on organic produce is often higher. So because they can't use some of the same fertilizers that the conventional farms do, what they do is they use manure as a form of fertilizer, but they rush it. They rush the process and they use it before the manure is fully composted. And that can spread E. coli over all of the plants. So for the people that go out and they buy organic produce and they don't wash it and they don't wash it properly, your chances of being contaminated by some type of bacteria like E. coli are much higher if the organic farm is cutting corners and they're using the manure too quickly. Now, would it be safe to say that because of those organic farms that are outliers, that using manure-based compost is bad? Of course not. You're using this extreme case where people are abusing a system and you're applying it to everybody, and we're just not doing that in the backyard garden. Now look, I'm not telling you how to garden. You should garden whatever way you think is best and that works for you. I'm not telling you to use products like Miracle-Gro in your garden, and to be completely honest, I don't really even use Miracle-Gro in my garden. I use Jax. I think it's a much better product and it's a better value per pound when you buy in bulk like this. I just try to make this channel as accessible as possible to new gardeners, and I use these as props to keep it simple because people can grab these for a few dollars off the shelves at their big box stores. I can't tell people to go out and buy a 25-pound bag of fertilizer for $80 as their first purchase. It's going to turn people off. So I do this to make this easy for everybody because I want to encourage as many people as possible to start gardening in their own backyard. And the way you do that is by keeping it simple and not make people adhere to all of these rules that will turn them off. Oh, and can we clear something up once and for all? Miracle-Gro is not a Monsanto brand. It's owned by Scott's, the lawn care company. I hear so many people say when you promote Miracle-Gro, you promote Monsanto. It's a totally different company. Monsanto was purchased by Bayer years ago, and yes, it is true that Scott's and Bayer have had partnerships in the past, but how extreme do we want to take this? Do we want to also boycott CVS because they carry Bayer aspirin, which is also a roundabout way of supporting Monsanto? Just do the best you can. Don't be too religious over this and try to make gardening inclusive so as many people join it as possible. That's what we really need to strive to do. Make it easy for folks. The third myth that organic gardeners love to spread that just isn't true is that you can't use pressure-treated lumber to build raised beds or use it at all in your garden. And this hasn't been true for decades. This used to be true many years ago when the primary method of treating residential lumber was chromated copper arsenate, or CCA, but that has been banned in residential lumber for decades. Modern residential lumber is either micronized copper azole treated or alkaline copper quaternary treated. And any of the lumber that you buy from the store will either be stamped MCA or CA or ACQ. So you can check the lumber at your hardware store and see what the treatment is. They are both non-toxic. All of my raised beds are micronized copper azole treated from Lowe's, and they are perfectly safe to use. They are non-toxic. Again, I'm not saying that you have to use pressure-treated lumber. I'm just saying there is no risk to doing so when it's copper treated. It is non-toxic. So you don't have to go through all the trouble of buying untreated lumber and then painting it with some kind of oil. You don't have to heat treat your wood. You don't have to buy some kind of really expensive cypress or walnut or cedar or redwood and spend $1 million to build your raised beds. The cheapest, easiest, and fastest way to have beds that'll last you 10 years or longer is to just go to the hardware store and buy copper-treated, pressure-treated lumber, and it will be just fine and it's totally safe. If you want to use the other woods because you like the looks, or you have the money to do it, or you just really love woodworking and you want the project, more power to you. I'm just trying to make this as easy as possible for most of us that aren't good at woodworking and don't have much money to spend on these types of things. And this is the easiest, cheapest, and fastest way to build your beds. Now, if you're concerned about that copper preservative leaching into your soil, there is little evidence to show that that's actually a problem. In fact, you can watch many videos all over YouTube where people send their soil away for soil analysis right up against the fresh copper treated boards. And what these tests suggest is that even soil right up against fresh lumber, the leaching is so minor that copper levels in that soil are still within normal parameters. And then when you go a few inches out, they're generally not elevated at all. And that's on brand new lumber that is eventually going to wash out all of that copper solution because copper is water soluble. And again, it's non-toxic anyway, because if it were hurting your plant, plants, the plants would be showing damage. All of the plants in these raised beds for the 4 years I've had them have been thriving. There's never been a problem, so there is no way that it can actually be harmful. In fact, I use a natural liquid fungicide during our rainy season to keep the diseases off my plants that I spray directly on the plants. So I'm actually covering the plants from head to toe, figuratively, in copper concentrate, and that doesn't harm the plants. So there's really no way that it's going to harm them from the soil, especially when soil tests show that it's really negligible leaching anyway. And the fourth myth that organic gardeners love to spread is that organic is always best. And I'm here to tell you that's not always true. Boy, I know I'm going to get it for this one. Let me explain. When shopping in a grocery store, the word organic is very powerful because it's a tightly regulated word that means a laundry list of certain things. Mainly that the produce was not sprayed with various chemicals which can be harmful to human consumption over long periods of time. So when you buy organic produce, you know that that produce was not treated with these potentially toxic pesticides and herbicides that you do not want in your body. And for that, the produce demands a higher value, which is also very valuable to the farms themselves because they can command a higher price point. But in the backyard garden, the word organic is basically meaningless. It's not regulated by anything, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the produce is any better because you as the gardener are controlling what is placed on those plants. So you can have produce that is way better than anything organic from the grocery store, but maybe doesn't fit the federal criteria to be labeled organic. Let me explain. Now, as previously mentioned, the bulk of the benefits from buying organic produce in a grocery store is what is not placed on the produce. You're avoiding all of those harsh and toxic pesticides and herbicides that a lot of conventional farms spray. But in a backyard setting, you control what's going on your plants, and you can eliminate all of those harsh pesticides and herbicides yourself. Now, in this case, as a backyard gardener, if you were to take two identical tomatoes and you were to raise them exactly the same, but the only difference between this tomato and this tomato is this tomato you followed the federal guidelines for what it means to be organic, and then this tomato you followed those exact same guidelines, but once every other week you added a little bit of diluted water-soluble synthesized fertilizer. Is there any difference between the two fruits? Well, yes, because you're giving this plant extra nutrients that are concentrated, this plant will probably be larger and have higher and heavier yield, so you'll probably get more tomatoes off this plant. Other than that, they're basically going to be exactly the same, except this tomato you could technically label organic, and this tomato you wouldn't be able to. So you'd have two plants, one being organic, one being not, but with the same fruit, and this one would be the better producer. So is it necessarily better to be 100% organic? I would argue not necessarily. I would argue that the best way to garden is somewhere being like 95% organic, where you eliminate pretty much all the problematic stuff from conventional farming, but every now and again, maybe once or twice a month, you simply amend your crops with some water-soluble fertilizer in the manufacturer's recommended dosages. That will make the plants, generally speaking, grow larger and produce more fruit as long as you're using the proper fertilizers with the right NPK ratios at the proper time. You don't want to use a high nitrogen fertilizer on a tomato plant when it's trying to flower and fruit. You could actually wind up harming your production. So as long as you're using the appropriate mixes, you can actually get better results and really have no downsides at all. So I would say the 95% organic approach could actually be better than the 100% organic approach. I'm not actually trying to be controversial with this video. I was just kidding in the beginning. I'm just having a little bit of fun. What I'm trying to accomplish with this video is to try and get rid of some of the elitism in the gardening community that says that you have to do all these things or else you're not as good of a gardener. Because it's things like that that keep people from growing their own food. A few generations ago, practically everybody had a garden. Now, if you have a garden, you're kind of the strange person. Like, what are you doing? It's so rare anymore. And when we make all of these different requirements, we have all of these sacred cows, and we treat gardening like a religion where there's only one right way to do things or else, we exclude anyone from even getting started. We need to encourage people to be new gardeners because anything you grow in your backyard is going to be better than anything you buy in the grocery store. It's going to taste better. It's going to be better for the environment. It's going to be better for your health. It is just better in every way, shape, or form, and we need to encourage people to participate more. And if that means not being 100% organic, maybe they'll only be 80% organic, that's fine. It'll get them started, and as they hone their craft, they will naturally start buying less and less products, and they'll adopt better culture on their own, and they'll become closer to 95%, if not 100% organic as they go. So I try to make this channel as inclusive as possible, and I like to share these products that I use that aren't completely organic because I want to be transparent with you all. A lot of gardeners won't touch these types of subjects because they always get pushback for it. Well, I'm willing to take the slings and arrows if that means that people will flock to gardening. I will do anything it takes to get you all to grow more food in your backyard, and I hope you understand this is coming from a space of positivity and love and encouragement for everybody to grow as much as possible. It's not made to be criticizing anybody. So everybody, I hope that you enjoyed this video. It's a little bit different than most of the videos I make, but I hope you had a little bit of fun with it. I hope you got some good information out of it. I'm not saying that everything I do is perfect, far from it, but maybe it got the wheels in your mind turning a little bit, and it'll get you to think a little bit differently. If I get you to think, that's all I'm really trying to do. I just want to encourage a new way of thinking here and there. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I featured in this video or that I use in my garden in general, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description, so expand that, click on the link and see everything I use in real life, and while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comments section below. Oh boy, Daily, probiotic packed yogurt, frozen yogurt with bananas and peanut butters. Oh, he's gonna be so happy. He loves this. Okay, Dale, ready? Up. Okay, Dale. And high five. Yes, very good. Down. Such a good boy. Such a smart boy. And he loves these ice creams so much. Look at that noser and tongue go. Look at it go.